It was late afternoon when the sun's final rays stretched across the sky, dipping low and painting the world in tones of gold and amber. Through the wide-paneled windows of the modest suburban home, the light spilled inside like liquid fire, flooding the living room with warmth. Outside, laughter rang out. The pure, unfiltered kind of laughter that only children could produce. Roman sat still, his body angled toward the glass, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding beyond it. His son, Daniel, darted across the lawn, small legs pumping, face beaming with joy. Chasing after him, Elena, Roman's wife, moved with playful grace, her laughter rising to meet the child's, harmonizing in perfect rhythm. The boy tripped and tumbled onto the grass, giggling uncontrollably. Elena swooped him up in her arms, twirling him as her laughter spilled across the yard like music. It was perfect. Too perfect. Roman had once believed moments like this were the proof of a life well lived. He had worked for years to build this quiet stability, sacrificing late nights, enduring long commutes, saving every penny so his family could live in a home where happiness seemed to bloom naturally. And on the surface, it had worked. Anyone walking past their fence would see joy, would envy what they had, would whisper, "That's what true happiness looks like." But Roman's chest was heavy. The smile that should have risen to his face felt like a burden he could no longer lift. Because deep inside him, something cracked each time Elena's laughter filled the air. Beside him, in the living room, sat a man whose presence was unusual, even unsettling in the context of such domestic bliss. Martin, a retired detective, sat in silence on the worn armchair, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze as sharp as it had ever been in his years of service. Martin wasn't family, not a close friend. Roman had met him months earlier, introduced through a mutual acquaintance at a community gathering. The old man had carried himself with the weight of someone who had seen too much, who no longer lived for small talk. And though Roman hadn't expected it, they had formed a quiet bond. Roman appreciating his bluntness, Martin appreciating the rare space where no one asked him to share war stories. Now, as the golden evening played across the yard, Martin's eyes stayed fixed outside. His silence carried tension, a kind of unease that seemed to vibrate in the air. Roman had wanted company, maybe advice about small matters of life. Instead, he felt like he was waiting for a verdict. Without warning, Martin reached across and grabbed Roman's hand. The grip was strong, but trembling. Roman startled, his body jerking at the sudden contact. When he looked at the older man, he was shocked to see something he had never expected: fear. The detective's lips moved, his voice a whisper so sharp it sliced through the evening calm. "What's your wife's real name?" Roman froze. For a moment, the words didn't register. He blinked, confused, thinking he'd misheard. But the intensity in Martin's eyes left no room for error. "What?" Roman finally muttered, disbelief threading his voice. "I asked," Martin said again, his whisper more forceful now. "What's her real name?" The absurdity of the question struck Roman like a slap. Elena? What about Elena? She was his wife, the mother of his child. What kind of question was that? Why here? Why now? He tried to laugh it off, to dismiss it as some cruel joke, but when his eyes lingered on Martin's face, the smile died before it could surface. Martin, the man who had stared into the eyes of murderers without flinching, was pale, his skin clammy. His eyes trembled. Roman's stomach churned. Before he could speak, Martin leaned in closer, his breath hot against Roman's ear. "Take your son," he said. "Get out of this house. Don't argue. Don't explain. Just go." Roman opened his mouth, but the detective shoved something into his palm, a crumpled piece of old newspaper, soft from age. Roman's hands shook as he unfolded it. The ink was faded, but the photograph was undeniable. His heart stopped. His throat tightened. The face in the photograph smiled back at him with chilling familiarity. Younger, maybe, hairstyled differently, but unmistakably Elena. Beneath it, the headline screamed in bold type, "Arrested for murder, released for lack of evidence." The room seemed to tilt. Roman's breath came shallow, ragged. His vision blurred, but the words burned into him like fire. Arrested for murder. Elena. His head snapped toward the window. There she was, holding Daniel, spinning him in the sunlight. Her laughter filled the air. Roman clutched the paper tighter, the ink smudging beneath his trembling fingers. Inside him, everything collapsed. That night marked the beginning of the unraveling. Sleep no longer came. Roman lay awake in the dark, listening to her steady breathing beside him, his mind replaying every second of the day. He watched her in silence, every detail magnified. How she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her hand lingered over her phone before setting it face down on the nightstand. Always face down, always locked. He told himself it couldn't be true, that Martin was wrong, that the past in that newspaper belonged to someone else. But doubt was poison. It didn't matter if the evidence was circumstantial. Once it seeped in, it corroded everything. By day, Elena smiled and laughed as always, but now Roman's eyes saw differently. The laughter that once warmed him now felt rehearsed. Too perfect, as if she had memorized the script of domestic happiness and performed it flawlessly. She stood by the window often, gazing out into the street as if expecting someone. Sometimes at night, she lingered there for long minutes, her silhouette etched against the darkness, still and waiting. Roman began searching through her things. He combed through old papers, contracts, certificates. Everything was spotless, too clean, as if her past had been meticulously scrubbed, leaving behind no trail, no cracks. The more perfect it looked, the more suspicious it became. And then came the night. Roman woke in the small hours to the sound of a voice. At first, he thought it was part of a dream, but the tone pulled him to consciousness. He slipped quietly out of bed, his bare feet silent against the cold floor. Her voice carried faintly from the living room, low but urgent. He crept closer, every muscle tense. No, he doesn't know anything. Yes, I'll take care of it. The words sliced through him. His chest constricted, his pulse pounded in his ears. Elena ended the call. Roman, frozen in the shadows, watched her stand motionless for a moment before moving to the window again. She stared out into the darkness, silent, as if waiting for the night to answer. Roman's world shattered. By morning, his decision was made. He packed 2 bags, one for himself, one for Daniel. When Elena walked into the kitchen and saw them, her face drained of color. What is this? Where are you going? Her voice trembled, her hands twitching nervously. Roman didn't answer. His silence was absolute. Roman, she whispered, stepping closer. Please, let me explain. That was all in the past. You don't understand. It's not what you think. He turned away. His hand found Daniel's small fingers and held them tight. Wait. Elena's voice cracked, raw with panic. It's dead. That life is dead. I'm not the same person anymore. Her words fell into the void. Roman's silence was his verdict. He led Daniel toward the door. Elena's footsteps scrambled behind them. On the driveway, she broke. Her knees hit the ground. Her hands reached out as tears streamed down her face. For God's sake, don't go, she screamed. You'll ruin everything. Roman opened the car door. Daniel climbed in, eyes wide with confusion, clutching his stuffed toy. Roman turned the key. The engine roared. Elena's scream tore through the air, raw and agonizing, as Roman pulled away. Daniel's small hand gripped his father's tightly. Neither of them looked back. In the rearview mirror, Elena's figure collapsed, broken and sobbing, her arms clawing at the emptiness between them. Roman drove on, his face carved from stone, his heart colder than ice. They say a broken heart burns like fire. But Roman knew now that it wasn't fire. It was ice. It spread slowly, creeping into every corner, freezing everything it touched. And when it finally shattered, there was no pain left, only silence. He had once believed love was an anchor, steady and true. But now he understood, it had been a chain forged of lies. And that morning, he broke it. That night, Daniel slept peacefully in the next room, his steady breathing the only sound in the house. Roman sat awake, staring into the darkness, his thoughts heavy but clear. For the first time in years, there were no illusions left. Elena had lost everything, and Roman had found the truth. If this story kept you on edge, take a moment to reflect. What would you have done in Roman's place? Would you have left, or stayed and listened? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more haunting stories of love, lies, and the chilling truths that hide behind perfect smiles. Hit the bell so you never miss the next story.